Hey guys, and welcome to my April wrap-up. For the month of April, I actually read a bit more than what I read the past month, and I'm quite happy with the amount of books that I read. I read a couple of review books and a lot of non-review books. I read in total 8 books, and I'm currently in the middle of my 9th. I'm actually exactly halfway through, so I read 8.5 books this month, which is pretty good. I'm gonna go and start talking to you about all the books that I read and what I thought about them. I'm gonna start with the book that I'm currently reading, and that book is Blood Promise by Rochelle Mead. I'm actually 250 pages in exactly, so I'm a little bit over the halfway point. And this is the 4th book in the Vampire Academy series, and so far it's pretty good. I mean, I don't know, I'm just not as invested in this relationship in this book as everyone is. But things are finally starting to pick up, and I'm hoping that I will breeze through the next 200 pages. The next book that I read is part of my 10-book challenge, and it's Angel Fall by Suzanne E. This is book number 1 in the World Penryn and End of Days series? I don't know. It's a trilogy. And this is the first book, and I really wanted to check it out, and I did, and I loved it. I gave this book 5 stars. It was so good, and I cannot wait to pick up the sequel. I already own it, and thank God that End of Days is coming out like really soon in May. So I don't have to wait at all to finish this trilogy. The next book that I read is actually a review book, and it's The Wrath and the Dawn by Renee Adier. This is a book that is a retelling of an Arabian story called 1001 Nights. And this sounded so good, and it lived up to every expectation I had. I gave this book 5 stars. Didn't know that it wasn't a standalone, but it isn't a standalone. It's actually part of a series, and I'm actually quite happy that it is, because from the way that, like, even though it's 385 pages, I wasn't bored at all in a single page. Everything was just so fast-paced, so good, and like nothing dragged on, so I understand why it's not a standalone, because Renee has so much to say through these books and through the series that she's writing right now. So I gave this book definitely 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is a middle grade book, and it's also a review book. It's Sophie Kinsella's Finding Audrey. I really enjoyed this book. It's about a girl who has social anxiety, and just her dealing with it, meeting someone through her brother, and like the family dynamic is hilarious. It's not a Sophie Kinsella book if it's not funny. So this is unbelievably over the top, funny in a really good way. So it's not like you go, haha, it's an actual laugh out loud kind of book. So I definitely recommend it to people who don't even read middle grade, because I'm one of those people, and I ended up giving this book 5 stars. So this is the month of 5 stars, guys. Like, I'm not even kidding. This is actually quite weird for me. The next book that I read is another review book that was sent to me by the author very, very kindly, and it is Nearly Found by El Cosimano, and this book comes out in June actually, but I couldn't hold off on reading it because I really, really wanted to know what happens next. This is the sequel and the last book in a duology. The first book is called Nearly Gone, and it was so good. It's one of my favorite YA contemporary mysteries. El Cosimano does it so well, and she did it really well in the first book, so I had my guard up on like how things are going to happen in the second book, and if it's going to be as good as the first book. It definitely is, maybe even better than the first book in terms of like the mystery, and I ended up giving this another 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read, another technically review book, is The Summer After You and Me by Jennifer Salvato Doktorski. This is her sophomore novel. The first book was How My Summer Went Up in Flames, which I read as an e-arc, and that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of hope with this one. This was set in Jersey Shore after Superstorm Sandy, and I wasn't a big fan of this book because A, didn't like the romantic line whatsoever, B, I hated all her friends. They weren't real friends, I feel, and C, there wasn't really anything happening in the book. The whole time I was like, I'm so bored. So I ended up giving this 3 stars just because it was still an enjoyable read in the end. The next book that I read is my last review book in this video, and it is The Wondrous and the Wicked by Paige Morgan, the 3rd book in the Dispossessed trilogy. and I love this book so much. Every single book she writes is as good as the previous one. And I actually read the first 2 books last year, but as soon as I dived into this one, I could remember every detail that happened in the previous 2 books, which is something very rare, that you really know that the books are actually very unique, so that A, you don't forget them, and B, you're not really mixing any events up with some other books. And that's what happened in this book. Completely remembered everything. And this was such a good read. It's like supernatural, paranormal, historical. There's like a whole romance, but it doesn't like overshadow the whole big plot. And there's a lot of kick-butt protagonists. And I love this trilogy. I'm sad it's like the final book, obviously, but it was a good run. Fantastic trilogy. I recommend it to a lot of people. And of course I gave this 5 stars. What else would I give it? The book before the last that I read is also part of my 10-book challenge, and it is Uninvited by Sophie Jordan. I have been wanting to read this book for so long, especially when I found out that it has something to do with like genetic mutations and like nature versus nurture debate and all that. And it sounded really cool. These people have like if they have a gene markup that tells people that they are predisposed to become killers. As soon as you're tested positive for this, you are pretty much labeled as HTS carrier, I think, and you're out of school, no more life for you, and if you were accepted to university, you're out. If you're working at a cool, a good place, you're out. That's it. No more living your life. And there's a lot of discrimination and such, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. It took too long for the book to get set up, because I knew immediately that she was going to be sent to sort of like a concentration camp, but that happened like over 100 pages in, and B, that concentration camp, like nothing even really happened. I just felt this book was nothing, not a lot of things happen. And I've read books that are like this, like the Hemlock trilogy has something like this, where they're werewolves and they have the Lupin syndrome, so they get sent to concentration camps, and the way that was done was amazing. This one, not so much. So I'm sad to say that I didn't really enjoy this, and I don't really know if I'll be reading the sequel, to be honest. That was quite disappointing, even though I really loved the concept and the book cover too, the play on the hair, but what can you do? It is what it is. And I gave this one 3 stars. The last book that I read is actually part of a buddy read with a couple of my high school friends. We buddy read through like WhatsApp, like that's where we discuss and such. And the book that one of the girls picked was Cecilia Ahern's The Year I Met You. Actually, I'm quite happy that she did, because this is not a book that I would ever pick up myself. And also, I was kind of confused, half like 100 pages in the book, not knowing where the author's taken this and what's going on or anything. The author doesn't really give you anything. So, yeah, if I was reading this alone, I'd be like, ugh, I'm so over this. Done. But because of the push from my knowing that I have to read this so we can discuss it that certain date, I read it, and then I totally skipped ahead from the girls and read so much to the point that I finished it while they're still halfway through it. So it was really, really good. I really enjoyed the book. Other than the beginning, which was really slow, I don't really have any negative comments about it, and I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. This is it for all the books that I read in April and currently am reading. Let me know if you guys have read any of these books and what you thought of them. So far, the countdown for my 10-book challenge is at 2.5, just because I'm halfway through Blood Promise, and that's also on that 10-book challenge. So I'm doing really well. Hopefully that next month I'm going to be reading at least 3 to 4 of those, or any books that I own. As long as I read a book that I owned for a while, that I bought with my own money, it goes towards that challenge. And yeah, see you in my May TBR to see what books I'll be reading next. Bye!